If you told like senior year of high school Logan that you were going to be flying in NASA aircrafts in a few years, what do you think he would say?
That wasn't even something I would have thought about, because a lot of people, they think NASA, obviously they think
Space.
leaving Earth. But
Yeah.
I guess I would have been like, well, I thought you wanted to do meteorology.
Like, you will have the time of your life here. I almost guarantee it.
Welcome back to the Tour the Nest podcast. Joining us today is Logan Jewell. Logan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a dual major in mathematics and meteorology. I'm a senior, and I'm originally from Ithaca, New York. At Brockport, I've been a math tutor for 2 years. I used to participate in club gymnastics, and then this past summer, I was lucky enough to intern with NASA for the Student Airborne Research Program, and I got to fly in NASA aircraft that were taking air quality measurements around the LA basin.
So, dual major, did you start out as a dual major?
No, I actually started as a meteorology major, and then my fall of junior year, I decided to dual major.
So why meteorology?
I've always been fascinated by weather since a young age. Always standing in the window watching storms come up to the house. In high school, all the teachers would ask me if we were going to have a snow day. So I don't know, I've always been fascinated by weather.
Yeah. So how did, when you were looking for schools, how did Brockport's meteorology program stand out to you and ultimately be your choice?
My current advisor, Dr. Griffin, he reached out to me when I applied and asked me to come visit and talk to him. And then I met with a couple current students, and I just really I really enjoyed talking to Dr. Griffin, and the students had nothing but great things to say. And that's kind of how I decided to come here. Before that, I was looking at lots of schools, but after coming and visiting and meeting with Dr. Griffin, I was like, yeah, this is where I want to go.
Yeah. And then what led you to add on math in addition to meteorology?
So as a meteorology major, we're required to take a lot of math courses. A lot of math and physics goes into meteorology. So I was already taking a lot of math courses, which led me to get a math minor. And I think it's like 3 extra courses to have a math minor. So I was already doing that, and I had finished all the courses I needed for a math minor, and I was approached by a math professor, asking if I would be interested in doing a math major. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if that, how possible that would be. I'm a junior already. And she laid it all out. You have to take this class, and it looked doable. So I was like, yeah, I'll try it. And I've really enjoyed a lot of my math classes, so I'm glad I did that.
And you're in your last semester now.
Yep.
How's the class? How does it feel to have just a few more basically weeks, months of assignments?
It's scary. It's very rewarding to look back and see how far I've come, but at the same time, it's scary to look at what the future might bring. Yeah.
Scary but exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have a favorite class that you've taken at Brockport?
Yeah, so that's actually a pretty easy question. Pretty easy answer to that question. I participated in our storm chasing class, which is a 3-credit summer class, and this was summer of 2024, where I think there was 8 students, 6 to 8 students that went storm chasing in the Midwest and Plains for 10 days in June, and we drove 5,000 miles in 10 days. We got to see supercell thunderstorms in Nebraska, and we got to see a lot of the country, which was add-on to that as well. So yeah, that was
awesome.
Definitely my favorite class, and they're going to offer it this year if they have enough students to do it, and I'm pretty sure that any student at Brockport can participate if they would like to.
And so, did you ever think you would get the chance to do that coming into college?
No. So when I was touring schools, a lot of schools would say, yeah, we have a storm chasing class. Yeah, we have a storm chasing club. But at the same time, they would always be like, but you might not get to go. There's a lot of people that want to go. And then that's the one great thing about Brockport is everyone in the meteorology program that wants to go can go. And if you can't go your freshman year, you'll be able to go the next year. So that's definitely a great thing to do. And there's no better way to learn than to see it firsthand.
What was your favorite part? I mean, I know you said you got to drive all across the country, which is cool, but is there like one specific memory from that?
Yeah, so we saw one picture perfect supercell thunderstorm in Nebraska, and we were able to chase it for a couple hours, just staying out ahead of it and stopping and take pictures. And then I think we never actually saw a tornado. It's a lot harder to see a tornado than people think. But we found out later that storm had produced a tornado because the National Weather Service had went and done a survey and found the damage from it. And we looked at the timing of the tornado and then looked at the pictures we took, and we found out that we were within a couple miles of it and didn't even realize.
Is that like heartbreaking?
Yeah.
Low key.
Yeah, it was in the rain, so you couldn't, it was rain wrapped is what they call it, so we couldn't see it. And it was like an EF0, but
yeah,
it was still cool to be like, wow, it was right there.
I was close.
It was right there. Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
So obviously that was cool, but like, was it scary?
So I personally wasn't. The only thing that personally scares me is lightning because it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
But
and you're in a car, which is made of metal.
Yeah. And when you're standing outside taking pictures, it can get dangerous. But Dr. Griffin and Dr. Rochette, the two professors that go on the trip, they both have experience storm chasing, and they have rules that we always follow. And for example, we never go on dirt roads because if it rains, they can get muddy and then you get stuck. And we also always have an escape route that's north, south, west, and east. So those rules definitely help when when chasing turns into running away from the storm, it's good to have those escape routes.
Yeah, you definitely want to be. You want to keep track of the storm, not the storm keeping track of you.
Yeah.
And is part of that, like you said, those rules, like staying a certain distance away from where it actually is?
Yeah. So we would stay well out ahead. Like the one thing about being out west that time of year is there's lots of storm chasers, which surprises a lot of people, but they just line up the road. So we'd always be leaving well ahead of the rest of the storm chasers just to be cautious.
Keep it safe.
Yeah.
Cool. That's sweet. That's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah.
I know a few people that have been meteorology students here, and I never even knew that was a thing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and I would suggest that anyone that's interested to do it.
Looking back on the experiences outside of the classroom that you've had in school, tell me about some of those things you've been able to do.
So I've participated in club sports. I've had a couple internships. I've done research here at Brockport as well. And I was a tutor for 2 years at the Math Tutoring Center in the ASC.
Tell me about your internship from last summer.
So I was interning with NASA SARP, which stands for the Student Airborne Research Program. And there's two programs, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, and there's 24 students in each. I was on the West Coast, based out of Southern California, which was really cool because I'd never been to the West Coast before, so that was my first introduction to that part of the country. And we get to fly in NASA aircrafts in airplanes for 2 weeks, and then we do a self-guided research project after that for the rest of the summer.
Awesome. So how did you find out about that opportunity and apply for it and ultimately be one of 48 students across the country selected?
So yeah, I was lucky enough that Trisha Hutton, who's a past student at Brockport, she graduated 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember, but she had done it. And I went to a conference that she was at, and she told me then that I should apply. And that was my introduction to it. Before that, I didn't really know about it. So I was lucky that she had done it before me and like kind of paved the way.
If you told like senior year of high school Logan that you were going to be flying in NASA aircrafts in a few years, what do you think he would say?
That wasn't even something I would have thought about because a lot of people, even like me, I was guilty of this. They think NASA, obviously they think
Space.
leaving Earth. But
Yeah.
NASA does a lot of Earth science research that people
Yeah.
don't know about. So yeah, I guess I would have been like, well, I thought you wanted to do meteorology, not.
Which is kind of a funny follow up to like, oh, you're gonna be working for NASA, and you're like, I didn't think that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So what was that like? Like your first time stepping into and flying on a NASA flight?
It was cool. It's the one plane I flew on it's a prop plane, but it has like dual props and it's pretty big. Like it's not much smaller than like a small jet that you would fly on. So that it was, but the cool part is the inside, there's no seats. There's a few seats, but the seats are placed in front of instruments so the scientists can sit and watch the instruments. But you can just walk around and look at all the different instruments, and there's computer screens everywhere, and you can look at the data that the instruments are taking. You can go up to the cockpit and look out the front. It's just so much different than commercial flights.
Yeah, right.
So that surprised me how like lenient they were with everything. Just they told us just walk around, ask questions.
Yeah, look at everything you want to.
Yeah.
So that was the first 2 weeks was actually being in the air, right? And so
well, first week was like introduction learning, and then the second week was in the area.
Okay. So tell me about what it was you were actually looking at, learning, researching.
So I guess I'll go back a little bit. There's 4 research groups in NASA SARP. There's ocean remote sensing, aerosols, air chemistry, whole air sampling is what it's called, which is just chemistry of air, and then land remote sensing. So the actual flights were taking data for the aerosol groups and the air chemistry groups. So and we were flying around LA, which is notorious for having bad air quality.
Right.
So that was the basis for the flights, was looking at the air quality. So, but I was in the ocean remote sensing group, so I actually didn't use any of the data from the flights because they were more focused on the air quality.
You just got to tag along.
I just got to tag along, exactly.
Which is pretty sweet.
Yeah. Which is even better because I didn't have to like worry about the instruments or anything.
Yeah, you don't have to sit down and take notes.
Yeah.
You can just look out the window.
Exactly.
That's cool. And so then tell me more about what your group was focused on then in like layman's terms.
NASA puts stuff in space. That's what they do. So most of their earth science research is with satellites that they've launched. So ocean remote sensing is using those satellites to learn things about the ocean, looking at ocean color, what's in the water, phytoplankton, like that type of stuff. But specifically what I was doing was I was using satellites to map oil slicks on the surface of the water.
And how did you go about that research for your summer experience?
So it was actually my first introduction to ocean remote sensing as a meteorology and math major. That's not something I've ever done. But I had 2 advisors that walked us through it, and everything can be done from your laptop. Like all the data is open source. You can find anything really you need. And then I just started like looking at satellite images and finding the oil slicks. And there had been people before me that had found that in the Santa Barbara Channel there's natural oil slicks. So they had already looked at them. So I just went from their research and continued on.
And what can you tell me about, like you just said, there was people before you that were doing similar research. And from what I've read about sort of the experience you had, I know that you integrated sort of a new machine learning method. Can you just describe how you were able to bring that to the table?
Yeah, so the big thing about SARP is they want to like build on projects from past years because this is a thing that happens every year, and your project is 5 to 6 weeks long, so it's hard to get pretty far in that amount of time. So they really want to see people building off of what happened the year before. So I can't remember if it's 1 or 2 years before, they had already like manually looked at images and circled where all the oil was, like outlined where all the oil was in images. And I started to do that as well, but it's like it like takes a lot of time. And you can't get a lot of images that way. So I was trying to make a machine learning model that could find the oil slicks and then outline them. So then I started researching what other people had done. In the spill, I forget the name of it. One of the spills in the Gulf of Mexico, there was a lot of research then. So I kind of piggybacked off that research.
And would you say that that's the ability for you to do that and figure that out? Does that kind of stem from like learning math here at Brockport?
Yeah, definitely. I think my math background definitely helped, because all machine learning is math.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all AI machine learning is. It's just math, statistics. That's what it is. But it definitely helped to, at least a lot of the models I'm using have already been built by other people, but it's helpful to at least have an idea of what's going on under the hood.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier to contextualize what you're actually seeing if you kind of know at least a bit how the computer got there.
Exactly.
Which is really sweet. And so what would you say to maybe a high schooler who's looking at maybe studying meteorology math at Brockport, or a freshman who could see themselves in the shoes of taking an opportunity like the one you had with NASA?
Yeah, I would just tell them that ask questions and reach out to people that are older than you and your professors. A lot of, I was introduced to these opportunities because I asked my professors, like, what should I be doing this summer? And the opportunities are there. You just have to ask. What
would you say was your biggest takeaway from that experience specifically, coming back to Brockport in the fall for your last year?
From my internship?
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway is that, everyone, when I went, I was when I'd say I'm from Brockport, they're like, oh, where's that? And I'm like, it's upstate New York, near Rochester. And even though we're a smaller school in a small town, I still was able to accomplish something. And I feel like the education that I got here really helped with that. And with the small classes, you really understand the content, and it really helps when you have to use that content for internships or for jobs later on.
And you mentioned that you're doing some research now back at Brockport too. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so for my undergraduate thesis, I'm looking at the 2013 El Reno tornado, which is the widest tornado ever. It happened in Oklahoma. And luckily, University of Oklahoma has a mobile radar that they had deployed that day, and they took observations of the tornado. So I'm using those observations to analyze the tornado at different spatial scales to understand why. The goal is to eventually understand why it was so big.
And how is the faculty and your peers in the meteorology and math department supporting you in being able to reach that thesis?
I meet with Dr. Griffin weekly. We meet for sometimes an hour, 30 minutes, sometimes multiple hours every week, making progress. And he went to the University of Oklahoma for his PhD, so he has connections there. And he's definitely, without him, I would have no clue where to go. So it's definitely nice to be able to meet with your advisor every day. Every week.
Yeah.
For multiple hours.
Yeah, I think that's another one of the benefits of going to a school like Brockport is the ratio of faculty to students is sets up the students to succeed, in my opinion. And you mentioned, that's not the only connection you even mentioned. You also mentioned that it was an alumni from your department that had done this opportunity before that pointed you in the right direction. And so it's just so big to have the people that can, if you have the talent and you also have the people around you to support you, you can go anywhere.
Yeah, and I'm trying to pass that on now. I'm trying to tell all the underclassmen that they should apply. And it's definitely nice to have those connections, since the department's small enough that everyone in the department. So it's very easy to reach out to people. It's very easy to mentor others, younger students, and be mentored. So,
and speaking of that, you said before that you tutored in the Academic Success Center for math. What was that experience like for you?
I really enjoyed it. It's challenging, but it's also very rewarding when you are able to help someone who is struggling, because we've all been there when we're struggling and you don't know how to do your homework and you're worried about the exam coming up. and then you're able to help them feel more confident going into the test. That's very rewarding feeling.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that the Academic Success Center is so basically the doors are so open.
Exactly.
Like you can kind of go in and get help
exactly
anytime. When you were a tutor, did you basically just go in and did you make appointments with students, or were you just kind of available as a resource?
So I had hours every week that I was just available, and the Academic Success Center does a great job of keeping the math tutoring center open as much as possible.
Yeah.
As many hours as possible. It's basically anytime you need help, you can go in there and get help, even if you say you have an exam in an hour and you need help right now. But that's very nice.
So say a student needs tutoring and like they're very aware that they need tutoring and they know that the resource is there, but they're, I don't know, embarrassed to go in, or they feel like it's not worth their time. How would you sell somebody on taking advantage of the ASC and going into whatever tutoring center their subject is?
Yeah, so I would just say to at least give it a try. I know that in the math tutoring center, all the tutors are looking for when new people come in, and we immediately greet them and say, like, what class are you here for? What do you need help with? It's a very welcoming community. One thing that's really nice is when you have multiple students come in for the same class, they can even work together, and then the tutor can help both of them at the same time. So I would say just try it, give it a chance, and I think you'd see how beneficial it is, and that it's a very welcoming community.
Yeah. And if somebody feels like intimidated by the fact that like, oh, like there's another student that's a tutor and they get it and I don't, and like that part's embarrassing, how would you convince them that it's really not that big of a deal?
Yeah, so I'm actually tutoring classes now that I went to the tutoring center for. So it's how it goes. Like when you're in the class, can be confused about topics, and someone who's been through the class that was confused about those topics too can help you through it.
Right.
So
yeah, I think people just need to remember that they probably could tutor in a year. Like they're going to pass the class, they're going to get through it, and eventually they're going to be the upperclassmen, and there's going to be an underclassman that could use their help too. Just kind of realizing that we're all on the same team here, and like nobody's going to judge you for needing help with something that pretty much everybody probably needs help with.
Especially math. It's difficult.
Yeah, as math, I feel like as somebody that's taken 0 math classes in college is something where you have to keep trying it until like it clicks.
Exactly.
I know that I remember in high school, I took AP Stats as a junior, and like math always came like, I didn't have too hard a time with math, but I also knew that like I didn't want to do math forever. And I remember AP Stats was like the worst I'd ever done in a class until like April. And then I got it, and like I wound up doing well on the exam and stuff. But that was because like being willing to accept help and go outside of class time.
Yeah, and maybe the way that the professor is explaining it just doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah.
And maybe someone else can explain it a different way that does.
Right. You can watch the same lecture video 10 times and maybe feel more confused by the 10th time. But then you just need to, like you said, hear somebody else's way of explaining it or watch someone else do the problem to understand. Or even just a different problem than the one that you've been trying to do for an hour. So
definitely.
You also talked about in the free time that you have, you were part of club sports.
Yep.
What club sport were you involved with?
I was a part of club gymnastics for part of my freshman year, my sophomore year, and then my junior year.
And did you do gymnastics in high school when you were younger?
No, I actually never did gymnastics before. My roommate had done gymnastics before, and he wanted to go, and he asked if I would go with him, and I was like, sure, I guess. And I went, and I really enjoyed it, so I kept doing it,
Yeah, so how do you think that, because Brockport has tons of club sports, how accessible do you think they are to students that have little or no experience in those sports prior to school?
Yeah, very accessible, especially the less common sports, like gymnastics is less common. So they're very understanding that most of the people coming don't have the background in it. And the first day I was there, they were all the people that had been there for a while were introducing us to all the equipment and telling us how to be safe. And it's just, and then when I was there, I would do the same thing, introduce new people the same way. And it's definitely a great community.
I mean, I know that I would, if I saw personally the sign for club gymnastics, I would think, well, there's no chance I'd be able to do that. So how did they make it? Well, how were you able to learn early on and then ultimately do it for a couple of years?
So I said the same thing when my roommate was like, come, you should come with me. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But when I got there, the men's president at the time, Brady, he said I started my freshman year. So that kind of was like, oh, so it can be done.
Yeah, it can be done.
And he just started showing me the like basics. Just specifically, I wanted to learn how to do rings and like parallel bars. So he just started showing me like basic stuff, pull-ups, how to do like just start doing leg raises, build your core, build your upper body strength. And then once you get strong enough, you can start moving on to the actual gymnastics stuff. But I don't think it's ever too late in life to start something new. So,
Yeah.
And when I went to there's a national competition for club gymnastics. I saw like 40, 50-year-old adults that are doing stuff that I can never do.
Yeah.
So
For real.
I don't think it's ever too late in life to start. Yeah.
I think Brockport, there's so many different things you can do for the first time here. Especially like club sports. There's a bunch of club sports here that we don't even have a varsity team.
Exactly.
So it's just a way to get involved and meet people too.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like a freshman and you're having a hard time like meeting people that are your kind of people or whatever.
Yeah.
I think joining a club sport is a huge way to meet people.
Yeah, and even if you don't want to compete,
Yes.
you still go to practices. No one's going to turn you away from coming to practices. And the great thing at Brockport is we have a fantastic gymnastics facility.
Yeah.
That the club has access to, and that's not the case at a lot of schools. A lot of the schools that we would compete against, they didn't have access to their school's gymnastics facility. So
Yeah, and so for a student who doesn't want to compete and like doesn't want to maybe commit as much time, how would you convince them that they can still have a good time with it even if they're not coming as regularly? How are practices structured to allow that?
yeah, so I can speak on gymnastics. That's what I did, but we would structure practices. We would warm up together, and then you could basically do whatever you wanted as long as it was something that was safe. And then when it would get towards competitions, the people that were competing would have priority because on equipment and stuff because they were competing. But you would still, even if you're not competing, you can still work in. Like no one was, I guess, hoarding the equipment or anything. So, and we had lots of people that would come in once a week, once every couple weeks, and it's a great way to exercise. So, and it's enjoyable. Yeah.
And so you're a senior, graduating soon. Where do you see yourself in a year?
My plan at the moment is to at least get a master's, but I currently think I want to get a PhD and do research. So I guess in a year I'd be at graduate school doing research, taking graduate classes.
And how have, like I kind of said before, the faculty that are above you, like especially Dr. Griffin or others, helped you apply for grad schools, do that search, that whole process, which can be kind of tough?
Yeah, the one thing that that's really beneficial is when you're in smaller classes, you make connections with all your professors. So then when they're writing letters of rec, they can really talk about how you are as a student, how you are as a person. And I think that is very beneficial when you're applying. And then also just having those connections, they can connect you to professors that they know that they maybe have met, and it's very beneficial, especially in science, because when you're going to grad school in science, you want to reach out to a specific professor who's doing something that you're interested in.
Yeah, right.
So that's nice to have those connections.
And you talked before about asking questions and sort of planning ahead and stuff when you're in your undergrad, but how else can a student who's maybe a little bit shyer or has a harder time, like, speaking with in class, how can they take advantage of the chances that they have being in small classes?
Yeah, I think the most beneficial thing you can do is go to office hours. A lot of times when I go to office hours, I'll be one of the only people in there, like, because there's not many people in the class, so there's not many people going to office hours, so you can really have that one-on-one time with the professor. You can ask questions that you might not want to ask in class in front of everyone. You can ask one-on-one.
Yeah, and we've emphasized this on this show before, but I think it's really great that, first of all, every professor has office hours,
Yep.
and you also are never really going to see a professor that has only office hours on Mondays in the morning or whatever. Like, they have pretty much all the free time that they can make, they will make, so that there's like the highest chance possible that you're able to actually get in and see that office or see that professor in your free time.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. If you could give like one piece of advice to a freshman who's in a major like yours, like a science major, and maybe feeling like they're drowning or don't know how to succeed in their classes, what's just one piece of advice that you would give to that student?
I would say try and talk to the other students in the class, because the one great thing about the meteorology department is we have the weather cube, it's called, and it's in Lennon. It's you've probably seen it. It's like it's a classroom that's just covered in windows, and that's open to just meteorology and earth science students. So we would just meet there when we need a study, and so. But I didn't know about that originally until I talked to other students, and they're like, "Oh, we're meeting here to study." That's definitely, I feel like that's very beneficial to study with other students, because they may be struggling with the same thing you are. So
yeah, for sure. And I think another thing is finding like the setting that you need to get the most focused or whatever. I know that I never really went to the library like my first 2 years here, and I would have a hard time sometimes focusing, like if I was trying to do work in my dorm room or in more of a louder public space. But as soon as I started going to the library, I found it a lot easier to like drown out, close the distractions, shut out the distractions, and actually just work for a couple of hours. So.
Yeah, I find myself in those rooms in the library where you can just shut the door and lock everything out, because I'm the same way. I get distracted very easily when I'm in my apartment.
Yeah. Even right before this, I went to the library and I said, okay, I'm just going to shut my phone off for an hour.
Yeah.
And just like force myself to work for an hour. And I think it's like the first 10, 15 minutes of like your study session or whatever it is are the most important, like to actually focus. And then you kind of lose track of time after that, I feel like.
Yeah, I think if you can just focus for, like you said, the first 10, 15 minutes, then you start to think less about the distractions.
So if you had to pitch Brockport in 30 seconds to somebody that's on the fence about whether they should come here, what would be that pitch?
So I would say small classes. I would say that we have almost every major you could think of. I would say that specifically in the departments that I've been in, all the professors are approachable, and they're all willing to give you advice. They're all willing to take time out of their day to explain concepts. Being able to go to the Academic Success Center pretty much whenever you want to get tutoring. All the club sports, I've had a great time participating in club sports, and that's a very welcoming community. There's not many bad things I could say about Brockport. I've enjoyed my time here, and I would definitely recommend anyone to come.
Awesome. Nailed it. Well, Logan, thank you so much for joining us, taking the time out of your busy schedule to tell us about your experiences here. Good luck the rest of your semester, and I'll see you at graduation.
Yeah, thank you.
Is this plant new?
Was it your way the whole conversation?
Well,
yeah, I'm like
just the last few minutes. I was like, have I always been looking through this plant? We've always had it there.
We've moved it back before, I think. Yeah. Sorry.
No. I mean, I didn't notice it till just now. It's not really that distracting, but anyway.